Picture this. A Korean mafia heir stands in front of Seoul's most powerful crime families and says 5 words that destroy his entire future. This is Dorothy Walker, the woman I love. His parents drag him into a private room minutes later. They give him an ultimatum he'll never forget. Choose her, lose everything. Your inheritance, your position, your protection, your life as you know it. He doesn't hesitate. But here's what makes this story absolutely devastating. Dorothy heard every single word through that door. She knows what he's about to lose. So she does the one thing she thinks will save him. She disappears into the night. And when Kong Min discovers she's gone, he makes a decision that will shock everyone who knows his name. This is the story of 3 summers that changed 2 lives forever. 15 years of separation that couldn't kill what they had. And one choice that proved love doesn't negotiate with power. Welcome back, Sphere family. If you're new here and haven't subscribed, now's the time. You don't want to miss how this unfolds. This is Story Sphere, where we tell stories that stay with you long after they end. Now let's continue. Kong Min wasn't supposed to fall in love with anyone, let alone choose them. Born into the Biko clan, one of Seoul's most feared mafia dynasties, his entire existence was mapped out before he took his first breath. The armed guards outside his childhood bedroom weren't for show. Whispered orders in darkened rooms weren't movie scenes. This was real life for the only son of a family whose name made grown men lower their voices. Everything about his upbringing screamed one message. Royal blood doesn't mix with common blood. Strategic marriages strengthen the syndicate. Love is a liability that gets people killed. His parents had already selected 3 potential brides from allied families by the time he turned 13. Alliances mattered. Bloodlines mattered. Power mattered. Nothing else did. But Kong Min had one escape from that suffocating world. His uncle, his father's younger brother, was different from everyone else in the family. Gentle where others were brutal. Thoughtful where others were calculating. Every summer, this uncle traveled to Charlotte, North Carolina, handling quiet overseas business for the family. And starting when Kong Min turned 15, his uncle took him along. The official story? The boy needed to understand the family's international operations. The real reason? His uncle knew the kid was drowning in Seoul, crushed under expectations no teenager should carry. Charlotte became Kong Min's breathing space. While his uncle conducted business, he attended a small Anglican church where the congregation knew his uncle as a humble immigrant with a quiet smile. Nobody knew about the empire back in Korea. Nobody treated him like royalty. For 3 summers, Kong Min got to be just a kid. And that's where fate stopped being predictable. 15-year-old Kong Min walked into the church hall on a humid June afternoon, following his uncle to some youth event he didn't particularly care about. Then he saw her. A small girl sat cross-legged on the floor in the corner, braids swinging as she bent over a sketchbook. She was drawing portraits of the choir members with such focused intensity that she didn't notice him watching. When someone called her name, she looked up, and her eyes met his for just a second before she grinned shyly and clutched the sketchbook to her chest. Dorothy Walker, 12 years old, soft-spoken, born and raised in Charlotte. Her father ran youth art activities at the church, and she had a natural gift that made everyone stop and stare at her work. Kong Min couldn't look away. Within a week, they were inseparable. He followed her from the art room to the playground like a shadow. She showed him how to sketch faces, laughing when his first attempts looked like lopsided potatoes. He taught her how to write her name in Korean characters, guiding her hand carefully across the page. Their friendship was innocent, bright, easy, the first pure thing in Kong Min's life. She didn't know about armed guards or whispered orders. She just knew this quiet Korean boy who smiled more every day and seemed fascinated by everything she did. They passed notes during rehearsals, shared snacks on the church steps, told each other secrets they'd never told anyone else. The summer flew by too fast. On his last day in Charlotte, Kong Min found Dorothy sitting under a tree behind the church, drawing in that sketchbook she carried everywhere. Dorothy, his voice cracked slightly. I'll come back next summer. I promise. She looked up at him with those bright eyes and smiled. I'll be here. And she believed him completely. She looked up at him with those bright eyes and smiled. I'll be here. And she believed him completely. The following summer, 16-year-old Kong Min stepped off the plane in Charlotte and headed straight to the church. 16-year-old Kong Min stepped off the plane in Charlotte and headed straight to the church. Dorothy was taller now, more confident. Her artwork had gotten even better. She'd started taking advanced classes, and her portfolio was filled with stunning portraits. When she saw him walking through the church doors, She dropped her sketchbook and ran straight into his arms. This summer was different. They weren't just kids playing anymore. Their conversations went deeper. She showed him the pain behind some of her drawings, the way art helped her process things she couldn't say out loud. He opened up about the sadness that lived behind his eyes, the way home felt like a prison with gilded bars. "You seem so far away sometimes," Dorothy said one afternoon while they sat by the lake. "Like you're here, but also somewhere else." "I am somewhere else," he admitted. "But when I'm with you, I'm just me." They passed notes during youth rehearsals like before, but the content changed. Hopes instead of jokes. Dreams instead of doodles. She talked about opening an art center someday where kids could create freely. He talked about wanting a life where he could choose his own path. Long afternoons stretched into evenings. Drawing each other became an excuse to stare without awkwardness. Secrets shared became confessions. And Kong Min felt something shift inside his chest. Something he'd never felt before and couldn't name yet. He was falling for her. Silently. Powerfully. Hopelessly. When he left at the end of summer, the goodbye felt heavier. Dorothy hugged him longer this time. "Next summer?" she asked. "Next summer," he promised. Neither of them knew what was coming. When he left at the end of summer, the goodbye felt heavier. Dorothy hugged him longer this time. "Next summer?" she asked. "Next summer," he promised. Neither of them knew what was coming. 17-year-old Kong Min returned to Charlotte carrying feelings he could barely contain. 17-year-old Kong Min returned to Charlotte carrying feelings he could barely contain. Dorothy was 14 now. The girl he'd met 3 years ago had transformed into someone who made his heart slam against his ribs every time she smiled. She'd grown into herself, more assured, more radiant, more beautiful. And she looked at him differently too. This summer crackled with awareness neither of them fully understood. Shy glances that lasted too long. Nervous smiles when their fingers brushed while drawing. Conversations that felt charged with something unspoken. One quiet evening behind the church, while the sun set and painted everything gold, Kong Min finally took Dorothy's hand. Her breath caught. His heart raced like he'd run miles. "Dorothy." He struggled to find words in English, switching between languages nervously. "Someday when I'm grown, I'll come for you. I'll choose you." She squeezed his hand tighter. "What do you mean?" He couldn't tell her everything. Couldn't explain the empire waiting for him in Seoul, or the chains already tightening around his future. But he could tell her this truth. "My life at home is complicated. But you're not complicated. You're the only simple, good thing I have. And I promise, someday I'll come back and we'll figure this out." Dorothy's eyes shimmered with tears she didn't let fall. "I'll wait." "You shouldn't have to wait." "I'll wait anyway." They sat there as the sun disappeared, neither wanting to let go of the other's hand. Both sensing this summer would be different somehow. They were right. 2 weeks before Kong Min was supposed to return to Seoul, his uncle died suddenly. A heart attack, quick and devastating. The man who had been his only escape, his only ally, his only chance at freedom, gone in an instant. The yearly trips to Charlotte ended immediately. Kong Min's parents, already suspicious of how much time he spent at that church, forbade any further contact with anyone from America. When he tried to argue, when he mentioned Dorothy's name, his mother delivered words that would echo in his skull for years. "In your wildest dreams, Min royals do not marry black girls." His father was more direct. "Forget her. That door is closed." They monitored his communications, restricted his travel, tightened their grip on every aspect of his life. If you're feeling that heartbreak right now, that frustration, hit that like button. Because what happens next is 15 years of separation that should have killed this love. But it didn't. Stay with me, Sphere family. Kong Min couldn't reach out to Dorothy without putting her in danger. Couldn't explain why he vanished. Couldn't keep his promise. So he broke it. Dorothy waited for him the next summer. She showed up at the church every single day in June, sketchbook in hand, eyes scanning every face that walked through the doors. Her father watched his daughter's hope fade a little more each week, her smile becoming forced, her laughter hollow. Maybe something happened, she told herself. Maybe he'll come next week. But he never did. The summer after that, she came less frequently. The hope had dimmed but wasn't dead yet. She checked the church on weekends, just in case. Draw portraits to pass the time. Tell herself that promises made at 17 don't always survive reality. By the third summer, Dorothy had stopped waiting. Not because she stopped caring. You don't stop caring about your first love just because they disappeared. But hope has a shelf life, and hers had expired. She threw herself into art. Graduated high school with scholarships. Got into a prestigious art program. made plans to leave Charlotte and chase her dream in Los Angeles. On the day she left for LA, Dorothy stood in that church one final time. She walked to the tree where Kong Min had made his promise and placed her hand on the bark. "I hope you're okay," she whispered to the ghost of a boy she once knew. "Wherever you are." Then she walked away and didn't look back. Kong Min returned to Seoul and descended into hell. His uncle's death meant no more escapes. No more summers of freedom. No more breathing room. He finished his final years of secondary school under constant surveillance, then entered university studying business, though everyone knew what business really meant. At 21, he officially entered the syndicate. The gentle boy who had drawn pictures with Dorothy Walker ceased to exist. In his place rose someone harder, colder, more dangerous. Someone who needed to be dangerous to survive. Kong Min learned to read people like Dorothy read sketchbooks. Learned to identify threats before they materialized. Learned to make decisions that kept him alive and advanced the family's interests. His intelligence became legendary. He could see 3 moves ahead when others were still processing the current situation. By 25, his reputation preceded him everywhere. Cold, collected, terrifyingly smart. The kind of man who smiled politely while destroying your life. Physically, he transformed too. The slim teenager became broad-shouldered and imposing. His features sharpened, grew more angular. Women noticed him constantly, threw themselves at him regularly, but he remained distant, untouchable. And then he got the tattoo. A barbed wire design that coiled around his neck like a permanent collar. In their world, it marked rank, commitment, the life he could never escape. Every time he looked in the mirror, that ink reminded him of his chains. He dated occasionally because it was expected. Attended meetings with potential brides his parents arranged. Smiled through dinners where families negotiated alliances like business deals. But none of it touched him. Dorothy Walker remained his one unbroken memory of gentleness. The only time he'd felt like himself. The only promise he'd ever made that mattered. Years blurred together. 26, 27, 28, 29. And then came his 30th birthday. Kong Min sat alone in his penthouse apartment overlooking Seoul, surrounded by luxury that felt hollow. 30 years old. Powerful beyond most people's imagination. Wealthy enough to buy whatever he wanted. And emptier than he'd been at 15. He'd been going through old belongings that week, clearing out storage that hadn't been touched in years. Childhood books. School projects. Boxes his mother had packed away. That's when he found the journal. A small notebook from when he was 17. He'd forgotten it existed. Opening it felt like stepping into a time machine. Pages filled with teenage thoughts, sketches, random observations. And then something fell out. A small piece of paper, folded carefully, edges worn soft. Kong Min's hands trembled as he unfolded it. Dorothy's handwriting. Her email address. A note she'd given him that last summer. Just in case you ever want to write. He stared at it for a full minute, heart slamming into his ribs so hard he could hear blood rushing in his ears. Dorothy. Her name came out as a breath, barely a whisper. The promise he'd made as a 17-year-old boy roared back to life with such force it nearly knocked him over. 13 years had passed since he'd last seen her. 13 years of trying to forget, trying to move on, trying to become someone who didn't need that memory. But looking at her handwriting, young and hopeful and trusting, shattered every wall he'd built. Kong Min grabbed his laptop with shaking hands and typed her email address into every search engine he could find. Social media. Professional networks. Anything that might tell him if she was okay, where she was, if she was married with kids and had forgotten all about him. Hours passed. The sun set over Seoul. He barely noticed. And then he found her. Dorothy Walker. Artist. Founder of a children's art center in Los Angeles. Her website showed photos of a bright space filled with paint-stained tables and walls covered in kids' artwork. Her bio mentioned growing up in Charlotte and wanting to create safe spaces where children could express themselves freely. She'd done it. The dream she'd talked about all those summers ago. Kong Min scrolled through every photo on her website, desperate for a glimpse of her face. Most pictures focused on the kids and their art. Then, finally, he found one. A candid shot of Dorothy laughing while helping a little girl with a painting, curls framing her face, smile radiant and genuine. 27 years old now. Glowing. Confident. Beautiful in a way that made his chest ache. He stared at that photo until his vision blurred. Then he booked a flight to Los Angeles. Kong Min landed in LA 3 days later with no plan beyond finding her. He didn't call ahead. Didn't send an email. Couldn't risk her refusing to see him or, worse, not remembering him at all. After 13 years, what claim did he have on her memory? But he had to try. First, he tracked down her father's church in Charlotte through online records. Mr. Walker had retired but still attended services. Kong Min flew there first, standing outside the building where everything started, gathering courage he didn't know he needed. When he finally walked inside, Mr. Walker was arranging chairs in the hall. The older man looked up, stared, squinted. Kong Min. The recognition hit like a punch. This man remembered him. After all these years, after everything, he remembered. Mr. Walker. Kong Min's voice was rough. I know it's been a long time. 13 years. Mr. Walker set down the chair slowly, studying him with careful eyes. You got taller, harder looking. Dorothy waited for you, you know. 3 summers in a row. The words cut deep. I know. I couldn't come back. My uncle died, and my family. He stopped, unsure how to explain the empire and the chains and the impossible choices. I couldn't come back. But I need to find her now. Please. Mr. Walker was quiet for a long moment, weighing something Kong Min couldn't see. She's in Los Angeles. Built that arts center she always talked about. Works with kids in a rough neighborhood, giving them what she wished she'd had more of growing up. He paused. She doesn't talk about you anymore. Took her years to stop. Kong Min absorbed that like a blade between the ribs. I understand, but I have to see her. Even if she hates me. Even if she doesn't want anything to do with me. I have to try. Another long silence. Then Mr. Walker pulled out his phone and wrote down an address. This is her art center. She's there most days until evening. He handed over the paper, then gripped Kong Min's shoulder. You broke her heart once, son. I don't know what life you've been living that kept you away, but if you're going to walk back into hers, you better be sure. Because I won't watch her go through that again. I'm sure, Kong Min said immediately. I've been sure for 13 years. The art center occupied a converted warehouse in a worn-down LA neighborhood. Kong Min stood across the street, frozen, watching through the large windows. He could see figures moving inside, small children, paint everywhere, laughter he could almost hear through the glass. And then he saw her, Dorothy Walker, 27 years old, standing in the center of organized chaos. A little boy tugged on her shirt while a girl showed her a painting, and she gave them both her full attention like nothing else in the world mattered. She looked exactly like herself, and nothing like the girl he remembered. Grown into her features, confident in her body language, radiant in a way that had nothing to do with physical beauty and everything to do with becoming who you're meant to be. Kong Min couldn't breathe. He forced himself to cross the street, pushed open the door. A bell chimed. Several kids looked up. A teenage assistant glanced over. And then Dorothy turned around. Their eyes met across the room. Everything stopped. Her face went pale, then flushed. The paintbrush in her hand clattered to the floor. She stared at him like he might disappear if she blinked. Kong Min. His name came out as a whisper, barely audible. He couldn't speak. Could only stare back at her, drinking in every detail, trying to memorize this moment in case it was all he got. Dorothy's hands came up to cover her mouth. Tears filled her eyes instantly. Is that really you? He managed a nod. Took one shaky step forward. The teenage assistant was ushering kids toward the back room, sensing something huge was happening. Within seconds, the main space cleared, leaving them alone surrounded by children's artwork and paint-stained tables. Kong Min's voice cracked. Started again. Dorothy, I came back. She made a sound, half laugh, half sob. And suddenly she was moving, running across the room. Throwing herself into his arms with such force he staggered backward. Kong Min caught her, wrapped his arms around her, buried his face in her curls. She was sobbing against his chest, fists clutching his jacket like she might fall apart if she let go. 13 years, she choked out. 13 years, Min. I waited and you never came and I thought something happened to you or you forgot or... Never. He pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands, thumbs wiping away tears that wouldn't stop falling. I never forgot. Not for one single day. Dorothy, I'm so sorry. My uncle died and my family kept me away and I couldn't reach you without putting you in danger. And she kissed him. Desperate, messy, 13 years of longing poured into one moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dorothy was crying and laughing at the same time. You came back, she whispered, like she still couldn't believe it. I promised you I would. I'm just 13 years late. She laughed through tears, then really looked at him. Her fingers traced the edge of the tattoo on his neck, eyes widening slightly. What happened to you? Long story. He caught her hand, pressed it against his chest where his heart hammered. But I'm here now. And if you'll let me, I want to tell you everything. Dorothy searched his face, seeing the hardness, the danger, the years that had changed him. But underneath all of that, she saw the boy who'd drawn pictures with her under a tree in Charlotte. I have so many questions. I know, and I'm really mad at you. I know, but I never stopped. She trailed off, unable to finish. Neither did I, Kong Min said softly. Not for a second. They talked for hours after the art center closed. Dorothy locked the front door while Kong Min helped clean up paint and put away supplies. Small, domestic actions that felt surreal after everything. Then they sat on the floor surrounded by children's artwork, and he told her everything. About the empire he was born into. The Mafia dynasty that controlled his every move. How his uncle had been his only escape, and his death ended any chance of freedom. The way his family forbade him from contacting her specifically. The racism wrapped in classism, wrapped in traditions older than either of them. Royals do not marry black girls. He repeated his mother's words, watching Dorothy flinch. That's what she said when I tried to fight them on it. Dorothy was quiet for a long moment, processing. So you're really in the Mafia. Like actually. My family runs one of the most powerful syndicates in Seoul. I'm next in line to take over. He touched the tattoo on his neck unconsciously. This marks my rank. My commitment. The fact that I can never leave. Can't leave or won't leave. The question cut right to the heart of everything. Both. Neither. It's complicated, Dorothy. If I just walked away, they'd find me. Find anyone I care about. Make examples. That's how it works. You don't retire from this life. You either die in it or you become powerful enough that even your own family thinks twice about moving against you. She absorbed that, turning it over. So what changed? Why come find me now if nothing's different? Kong Min pulled out the small folded paper from his pocket. Her email address, worn soft from how many times he'd held it. I found this in my old journal. It's my 30th birthday this month, and I've spent 15 years trying to become someone who didn't need this memory. Someone who could forget you and move on and be the person my family needs me to be. He looked at her with raw honesty. But I can't. I tried, Dorothy. I really tried. And I can't. Tears slid down her cheeks again. I don't know what you want me to say. 13 years, Min. I built a whole life without you. I know. And I'm not asking you to throw that away. He struggled to find words. I needed you to know that I didn't forget. That I kept my promise. Even if I'm impossibly late. And if there's any part of you that still feels what we had, I want to try. I want to figure out how to make this work. How? Dorothy's voice broke. You live in Seoul running a criminal empire. I live in LA teaching kids to paint. How would that ever work? I don't know yet. But I know I'm done living a life where you're just a memory. They sat there in silence, surrounded by the dreams Dorothy had built, facing the reality that some things don't have easy answers. Finally, she spoke. I need time. This is a lot, Min. You can't just show up after 13 years and expect me to. She stopped, shook her head. I need time. I'll give you whatever you need. I'm staying in LA as long as it takes. Even if it takes forever? Especially then. Over the next 3 weeks, Kong Min proved he meant it. He rented an apartment near Dorothy's art center. Showed up every day not to pressure her, but just to be present. He helped with kids' classes, taught them basic Korean phrases, fixed broken furniture, did whatever needed doing. Dorothy watched this powerful, dangerous man. Tattoo visible on his neck, designer clothes gradually replaced by paint-stained shirts. Transform into someone who listened to 7-year-olds explain their artwork with complete seriousness. You're good with them, she said one afternoon while they cleaned paintbrushes side by side. Kids don't care about where you come from. They just care if you're paying attention. He smiled slightly. It's refreshing. Is this what you want? Really? Because your life in Seoul sounds very different from washing paintbrushes in a converted warehouse. Kong Min set down the brush he was holding and turned to face her fully. Dorothy, I've spent 15 years in rooms filled with the most powerful people in Korea. Politicians, business magnates, other crime families. And I've never felt more myself than I do standing here with paint under my fingernails helping kids draw pictures. He paused. So yes, this is what I want. Something shifted in her expression. The walls didn't come down completely, but cracks appeared. My family's having a big gathering in Seoul next month, Kong Min said carefully. My 30th birthday celebration. It's a huge event. Everyone who's anyone will be there. Political figures, business partners, allied families. Sounds terrifying. It is. But I want you there. Dorothy's eyebrows shot up. You want me at a Mafia gathering? In Seoul. Are you insane? Probably. But I'm done hiding what matters to me. I want my family to see you. I want everyone to see you. And I want you to see what that life is really like so you can make an informed decision about whether there's any future for us. Min, if you come and decide this is too much, that I'm too much, that this world is something you want no part of, I'll understand. I'll respect it. But I need you to see it all before you decide. His dark eyes held hers intensely. Because if there's even a chance you could love me back, I need to know. Dorothy's breath caught. Who says I stopped? The air between them crackled. Then come to Seoul with me. See it all. Meet my family. Walk into that world with your eyes open. And then tell me if there's a way forward. She should have said no. Every logical part of her brain screamed that flying to South Korea to attend a Mafia birthday party was possibly the worst idea in human history. But the part of her that had waited 3 summers for a boy who never came back, the part that had never fully healed from losing him, that part whispered one word. Yes. 2 weeks later, Dorothy Walker stood in the doorway of the most intimidating room she'd ever seen. The birthday gala was held in a massive estate on the outskirts of Seoul. Traditional Korean architecture blended with modern luxury. Hundreds of people filled the space, all dressed in expensive formal wear, all carrying themselves with the confidence of people who ruled their worlds. And she was about to walk into it wearing an emerald green dress Kong Min had insisted on buying her, curls styled elegantly, feeling like an imposter in a palace. You ready? Kong Min appeared at her elbow, stunning in a tailored black suit that somehow made him look even more dangerous. Absolutely not. He smiled, rare and genuine. Good. Neither am I. They entered together. The effect was immediate and electric. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned. Whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. Who is she? Where did she come from? Why would he bring her here? Dorothy felt hundreds of eyes dissecting her, judging her dress, her hair, her skin, her presence. The weight of their attention was crushing. But Kong Min's hand at the small of her back was steady. He guided her through the room, introducing her to people whose names she immediately forgot. Some were polite. Some were coldly curious. A few couldn't hide their shock that someone like her existed in someone like his orbit. Then his parents approached. Kong Min's mother was elegant and severe, beauty hardened by years of wielding power. His father exuded quiet menace, the kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to make people obey. Min. His mother's voice was ice. Who is your guest? This was the moment. Everything hinged on what happened next. Kong Min took Dorothy's hand, threaded his fingers through hers, turned to face the entire room. Hundreds of people, all watching, all waiting. His voice carried across the space, clear and unwavering. This is Dorothy Walker, the woman I love. The room exploded into chaos. Shocked gasps. Immediate frantic whispers. Someone dropped a glass. The sound shattered through the stunned silence. Kong Min's mother went white, then red. His father's expression darkened dangerously. But Kong Min didn't let go of Dorothy's hand. Didn't look away from his parents. Didn't back down even a millimeter. I've waited 15 years to say that publicly. And I'm done pretending she doesn't exist. His parents dragged him into a private room 10 minutes later. Dorothy waited outside, heart hammering, hands shaking. She could hear raised voices through the heavy door. Korean words she didn't understand, but whose fury needed no translation. Inside, Kong Min faced his parents' wrath. Have you lost your mind? His mother's voice was venomous. Bringing her here? Declaring this in front of everyone? Do you understand what you've done? I know exactly what I've done. You've embarrassed this family, made us look weak, suggested that our blood means nothing and alliances don't matter and what? That I have a heart, that I care about someone beyond their strategic value. His father spoke then, voice low and deadly. You will end this now. Send her home. Apologize to the families whose daughters you've insulted. Resume your duties as heir with appropriate seriousness. No. The single word hung in the air like a bomb. No. His mother's voice rose. You dare refuse? I've done everything you've asked for 15 years. Entered the syndicate. Built our power. Made you richer and more influential than ever. And I'm done. Kong Min's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. I'm marrying Dorothy Walker. With or without your blessing. His parents exchanged looks. Some silent communication that had formed over decades of marriage. Then his father delivered the ultimatum. Choose her and lose everything. Your inheritance, your position, your protection. You'll be cast out of this family with nothing. No money, no power, no safety. We'll make sure every business contact cuts ties. Every allied family turns their back. You'll be stripped of the Biko name itself. And if you think she'll stay when she realizes what you've given up, his mother added coldly, you're more foolish than I thought. Girls like her don't stick around when the money disappears. Kong Min looked at his parents. These people who had shaped his entire existence, who held his fate in their hands, who genuinely believed he would break under this pressure. Then I choose her. The words came out calm, certain, absolute. His mother laughed bitterly. You're throwing away an empire for some American girl you knew for 3 summers 15 years ago? This is insanity. No. Insanity is spending 15 more years, living the life you want instead of the one I do. I'm done. Min. I said I'm done. He turned and walked toward the door. If you leave this room with her, his father called out, you leave this family permanently. There's no coming back from this decision. Kong Min's hand touched the door handle. His entire future balanced on what he did next. He thought about soul, power, wealth, the empire waiting for him. Then he thought about paint under his fingernails and Dorothy's laugh, and the feeling of being himself for the first time in 15 years. I know, he said quietly, and walked out. Dorothy saw his face when he emerged, resolute, heartbroken, free. We need to leave. Now. He took her hand, and they moved through the crowd toward the exit. People stared, whispered, parted like water around them. They made it to the front steps before Kong Min stopped, turned back toward the estate one last time. Min. Dorothy's voice was small. What just happened in there? I chose you. What does that mean? It means I'm not going back. It means I'm done with this life. It means, his voice cracked slightly. It means I'm free. Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. But your family gave me an ultimatum. Them or you. And I chose you, Dorothy. I'll always choose you. They stood there on the steps, his entire world crumbling behind them, her heart breaking and soaring simultaneously. Let's go, he said softly. Let's go home. They left the estate together. Left Seoul. Left everything he'd ever known. But here's what neither of them realized. Dorothy had heard everything through that door. Every word his parents said. Every threat they made. The complete cost of choosing her. She understood what he was losing. An empire. A legacy. Protection. Everything that made him who he was in this world. And she couldn't let him do it. They flew back to Los Angeles in silence. Kong Min seemed lighter somehow, like shedding that life had removed physical weight. He held Dorothy's hand the entire flight, occasionally squeezing it like he needed to confirm she was real. But Dorothy's mind raced the whole time. He'd given up everything. For her. Because of her. A man who'd spent 15 years building power and influence had walked away from it all in under 5 minutes. Because she existed. The guilt crushed her. When they got back to LA, Kong Min wanted to celebrate. Talk about the future, make plans, figure out their next steps. But Dorothy was quiet, distant. What's wrong? He asked that evening in her apartment. Nothing. I'm just tired. But it wasn't nothing. That night, while Kong Min slept on her couch, Dorothy sat at her kitchen table and wrote a letter. Tears fell onto the paper, smudging ink, but she kept writing. She wrote about hearing everything through the door, understanding the full cost, knowing she couldn't let him sacrifice his entire life, his family, his legacy for her. She wrote that she loved him, had always loved him, would probably always love him. But sometimes love means letting go. She wrote that he deserved to live the life he was born into, not throw it away for a girl he'd known 3 summers 15 years ago. She signed it. I'm sorry, Min. I heard your mom. You were born into royalty and I was not. Live the life you deserve. Then Dorothy Walker packed a bag, left the letter on her coffee table, and disappeared into the night. Kong Min woke up to devastating silence. Something felt wrong immediately. The apartment was too quiet, too empty. Dorothy. No answer. He found the letter on the coffee table. Read it once. Then again. Then a third time, hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the paper. No, this wasn't happening. He called her phone. Straight to voicemail. Called the art center. No answer. It was early morning. Checked with her neighbors. No one had seen her leave. Kong Min collapsed onto the couch. That letter crumpled in his fist, feeling like his chest had caved in. She'd heard everything. Every word his parents said. And instead of understanding that he'd made his choice freely, she decided to make the choice for him. To save him from himself. The girl who'd waited 3 summers for him had left to protect him. And he'd lost her again. For several hours, Kong Min sat there in complete devastation. He'd walked away from everything, his family, his power, his entire identity, and she'd run away to give it back to him. But here's what Dorothy didn't understand. He didn't want it back. He'd tasted freedom, felt what it was like to be himself, loved someone more than power or money or legacy. And he wasn't going back. Kong Min stood up, wiped his face. Read the letter one more time. Then he walked out of Dorothy's apartment with one purpose: find her. He found her 3 hours later, crying on the steps of her small LA apartment. She looked up when his shadow fell across her, eyes red and swollen. Min. No. He sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. You don't get to run away to save me, Dorothy. That's not how this works. You gave up everything. I gave up nothing that mattered. Your family, your inheritance, my prison. Kong Min turned to face her, cupping her face in his hands gently. Dorothy, listen to me. Really listen. I didn't lose anything when I walked out of that gala. I found something. Tears streamed down her cheeks. What? Freedom. Purpose. The ability to wake up every morning and choose what kind of person I want to be. His thumbs wiped away her tears tenderly. I found you. After 15 years of trying to forget, trying to move on, trying to be someone I'm not, I found you. And you think I want to go back to that life? Trade you for an empire? Choose power over this. But your parents will either come around or they won't. Either way, it's not your decision to make for me. His voice was firm but gentle. I made my choice, Dorothy. Freely, knowingly. And I chose you. Not because I had to. Not because you asked me to. But because for the first time in my entire life, I got to choose something for myself. And I chose the girl who taught me how to draw portraits under a tree in Charlotte. The woman who builds safe spaces for kids to create. The person who makes me feel like the best version of myself. Dorothy sobbed openly now. I heard what your mom said. About girls like me not staying when the money's gone. My mother doesn't know you. Doesn't know what you're made of. Doesn't understand that you're the strongest person I've ever met. He rested his forehead against hers. Dorothy Walker, I've loved you since I was 15 years old. For 15 years, that love survived distance and silence, and an entire criminal empire trying to crush it. Do you really think I'd let you walk away now? I just didn't want to ruin your life. You are my life. The words came out fierce and certain. Everything else was just existing. This is living. They sat there on those steps, wrapped around each other, both crying now. I'm scared, Dorothy whispered. Me too. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. What do we do now? Kong Min pulled back to look at her, a small smile breaking through. Now, we figure it out. Together. One day at a time. We build something new. Something that's ours. Dorothy searched his face, seeing the truth there, the certainty, the peace. You're sure? Really sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. She kissed him then, desperate and hopeful and terrified and certain all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Dorothy laughed through her tears. Your parents are going to hate me forever. They'll come around. Eventually. And if they don't, that's their loss. So what now? You're just going to stay in LA and teach art classes. For now, yes. Maybe I'll figure out other things I'm good at. Maybe I'll discover I'm terrible at everything except drawing stick figures with 7-year-olds. But I'll figure it out with you. That's all that matters. Kong Min moved into a modest apartment near Dorothy's art center. The contrast to his Seoul penthouse was almost comical. No marble floors. No armed guards. No view of the city skyline. Just a simple 2-bedroom with creaky floors and neighbors who smiled at him in the hallway. He'd never been happier. The first few weeks were an adjustment. Kong Min had never had to worry about a budget before. Never cooked his own meals, or did his own laundry, or figured out public transportation. Learning to live like a normal person in his 30s was humbling and occasionally hilarious. Dorothy found him staring at a washing machine one afternoon like it was a complex puzzle. Need help? I've negotiated multi-million-dollar deals with international crime syndicates, he said seriously. But this machine has 17 buttons, and I don't know what any of them do. She laughed until she cried, then taught him how to separate colors from whites. He threw himself into the art center with surprising passion. Turned out years of reading people and understanding psychology translated well to working with kids. He could tell when a child needed gentle encouragement versus firm boundaries, when art was therapy versus just fun. The kids loved him, called him Mr. Min, and showed him their drawings with pride. Didn't care about tattoos or past lives or anything except whether he'd helped them mix the perfect shade of purple. Word spread online about the transformation. Someone recognized Kong Min from Seoul, heir to the Biko clan teaching finger, painting in a converted LA warehouse. Photos appeared on Korean social media. The contrast was stark. Kong Min in expensive suits commanding rooms full of dangerous men versus Kong Min covered in paint, smiling while a 6-year-old explained her crayon masterpiece. The photos went viral. His parents saw them. Of course they did. Everyone in Seoul saw them. Kong Min, their son, their heir, the future of their dynasty, grinning in a stained t-shirt, arms around Dorothy as they hung children's artwork on walls. For the first time, his parents wondered if they'd made a terrible mistake. 3 months after Kong Min walked out, his mother called. He almost didn't answer. Saw the Seoul number, and his heart lurched with old fear and older pain. "Hello, Min." His mother's voice was different. Smaller somehow. "I saw the pictures." Silence stretched between them across thousands of miles. "You look happy," she said finally. "I haven't seen you smile like that since those summers in Charlotte." "Yes." A long pause. "I need to tell you something. Your father and I have been talking. A lot. About the choices we made. The things we said." Kong Min waited, barely breathing. "We were wrong." The words came out rough, like they hurt to say. "Not about everything. We genuinely believed we were protecting you, protecting the family. But we were wrong about what protection means. Wrong about what matters. Wrong about..." She struggled. "Wrong about Dorothy." "Mom, let me finish. Please." She took a shaky breath. "I said terrible things. About her, about your choices, about what kind of life you should have. And I've spent 3 months watching my son be happier teaching children to paint than he ever was running an empire. That's forced me to confront some ugly truths about the life we built for you." Tears burned Kong Min's eyes. "I don't need you to approve. I know. That's what made me realize how wrong I was. You don't need our permission to be happy. You don't need our blessing to love who you love. You left everything behind without hesitation because you'd already made your choice." Her voice broke slightly. "And watching you thrive without us has been both heartbreaking and illuminating." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to know her. Dorothy. The woman who's done what 15 years of our planning couldn't do. Made you genuinely happy. If you'll allow it, I'd like to meet her properly. Not as a threat or a judgment, but as your mother trying to understand your life." Kong Min couldn't speak. Couldn't process this shift. "Your father agrees. We don't expect forgiveness. Don't expect you to come back to Seoul or resume your position. We want to be part of your life. Whatever that looks like now." They talked for 2 hours. Painful, honest, necessary conversations about the past and possible futures. When he finally hung up, Dorothy was watching him from the doorway. "Was that? My mother. She wants to meet you. Properly this time." Dorothy's eyes widened. "Seriously? Seriously?" She saw the pictures of us. Saw me actually happy. And it changed something. "Do you believe her?" Kong Min thought about it carefully. "I believe she's trying. That's enough for now." 6 months later, Kong Min's parents flew to Los Angeles. The meeting was awkward at first. Years of damage don't heal in an afternoon. But his mother watched how Dorothy interacted with children at the art center. Saw the way she and Kong Min moved around each other with easy familiarity. Noticed how her son's shoulders had loosened. His smile came quicker. His laugh sounded genuine. Over dinner that evening, his mother spoke directly to Dorothy for the first time. "I owe you an apology." "Several, actually." Dorothy blinked. "Mrs. Kong, I said inexcusable things. Made assumptions based on prejudice and pride and traditions that I'm realizing have caused more harm than good. You didn't steal my son. You freed him. And I'm sorry it took me months of seeing him actually happy to understand that." Tears filled Dorothy's eyes. "I just love him. That's all I've ever done." "I know. I can see that now." His mother's expression softened. "Thank you for not giving up on him. Even when we made it impossible. The reconciliation wasn't perfect. Old wounds still ached. But it was a beginning. If you're feeling that relief right now, that hope, share this video with someone who believes in love that fights back. Because we're almost at the moment you've been waiting for. The proposal is coming, Sphere family, and it's going to be beautiful. Stay with me." 2 months after that visit, Kong Min started planning. He'd been thinking about it for months, but wanted to wait until the timing felt right. Until Dorothy's laughter came easily, and his parents' acceptance seemed genuine, and their life together felt solid. One Saturday afternoon, he closed the art center early. Told Dorothy he needed her help with something. She walked into the main room and stopped. Every wall was covered in artwork. Not just from the kids, but pieces Kong Min had been secretly creating for months. Portraits of Dorothy at different ages. The tree in Charlotte where they'd sat together. The church where they met. Los Angeles sunsets. moments from their story rendered in paint and charcoal and love. Min. She turned in slow circles, taking it all in. When did you? I've been working on them for a while. You taught me how to draw, remember? All those summers ago. This is everything those lessons became. Dorothy walked closer to one portrait. Herself at 12, braids and sketchbook, sitting cross-legged on the floor. This is how I've always seen you, Kong Min said softly from behind her. Exactly as you were that first day. Perfect. Whole. Mine. She turned to find him on one knee. Her hands flew to her mouth. Oh my God. Dorothy Walker. His voice trembled despite his attempt at steadiness. I've loved you since I was 15 years old. For 15 years, that love survived impossible odds. Distance. Silence. An empire that tried to crush it. And now, finally, we're here. Free. Together. Building something real. He pulled out a ring. Simple, elegant, perfect. I don't have the empire anymore. Can't offer you wealth or power or status. All I have is this life we're building. These kids we teach. This love that survived everything thrown at it. Tears streaked his face now. But if that's enough, if I'm enough, will you marry me? Dorothy was sobbing too hard to speak. Could only nod frantically. Is that a yes? Yes. She dropped to her knees in front of him. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands. Then they were kissing and crying and laughing all at once, wrapped around each other in a room full of art and memories and promises finally kept. They got married 6 months later in a greenhouse outside Los Angeles. The space was filled with vines and soft natural light, simple and beautiful. Dorothy wore a flowing white dress that made her look like she'd stepped out of a dream. Kong Min wore a tailored suit with his barbed wire tattoo visible. No longer a symbol of imprisonment, but a reminder of how far he'd come. Both families attended. Mr. Walker walked Dorothy down the aisle, tears streaming down his face. Kong Min's parents sat in the front row looking emotional and slightly overwhelmed. Their son was marrying for love in a greenhouse while children from the art center served as flower girls and ring bearers. It was nothing like the wedding they'd imagined for him. It was better. When Dorothy and Kong Min said their vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the building. I promise to choose you, Kong Min said, voice thick with emotion. Every single day. Even when it's hard. Even when the world says we don't make sense. I'll choose you. I promise to believe you, Dorothy responded. When you say you're happy. When you say you're home. When you tell me this is enough. I'll believe you. And I'll choose you right back. They kissed as husband and wife while everyone cheered. The reception was simple. Good food, better music, lots of laughter. Kids from the art center performed a song they'd written about love. Dorothy's father gave a toast about patience and faith. Kong Min's mother surprised everyone by standing up and speaking. When my son was young, I thought I knew what his life should look like. I was wrong about almost everything. She looked at Dorothy with genuine warmth. Thank you for showing him what happiness actually means. And thank you for not giving up on our family, even when we gave you every reason to. The evening ended with Dorothy and Kong Min dancing under string lights while their families and friends watched. No regrets, Dorothy whispered against his chest. Not even one. He pulled back to look at her. You. Just that we wasted 15 years. We didn't waste them. We lived them. And they brought us here. He kissed her forehead. Everything that happened had to happen exactly this way. So we'd appreciate this. They swayed together as night fell, beginning their forever. They spent their honeymoon in the Colorado mountains. 2 weeks of isolation, peace, and actually being newlyweds without the weight of the past pressing down. They hiked during the day and made love at night and talked about everything, dreams, fears, the future. I want kids, Dorothy said one morning over coffee. Like eventually. Not right away, but do you? Kong Min smiled. I've spent the last year learning how to be good with other people's kids. I think I'd like a chance to raise my own. Yeah. Teach them to draw. Tell them stories about their mother being the most stubborn, beautiful, talented woman who ever lived. Make sure they know that love is supposed to be a choice you make every day, not an obligation. Dorothy's eyes filled with happy tears. That sounds perfect. They talked about expanding the art center, maybe opening a second location. Kong Min mentioned possibly going back to school, studying something that actually interested him. Psychology maybe, or education. You could be anything you want now, Dorothy pointed out. No one telling you what to do or who to be. I know. It's terrifying and amazing. He pulled her close. But whatever I figure out, I know I want to do it with you. On their last day in Colorado, they sat by a lake watching the sunset. I keep thinking about 15-year-old you, Dorothy said quietly. Making that promise under a tree in Charlotte. Did you know even then that you'd end up here? No. I just knew you were important. That what we had mattered. He squeezed her hand. But I think part of me always knew I'd come back. Even when it seemed impossible, something in me refused to let go. I'm glad you didn't. Me too. They watched the sun disappear, beginning the next chapter of their impossible story. A year and a half after their wedding, Dorothy gave birth to twins. A boy and a girl, arriving 3 minutes apart, tiny and perfect and screaming their arrival into the world. Kong Min stood in the delivery room holding both babies, completely overwhelmed and more terrified than he'd ever been facing down rival crime families. They're so small, he whispered, staring at the tiny girl in his left arm. How are they this small? Dorothy laughed exhaustedly from the hospital bed. That's what babies are, Min small. They named the boy James, after Dorothy's father. The girl they named Eunji, a Korean name meaning grace and wisdom. Both babies had Dorothy's bright eyes and Kong Min's serious expression, even at 2 days old. When both sets of grandparents arrived at the hospital, something beautiful happened. Mr. Walker held Eunji with tears streaming down his face. Kong Min's mother took James with trembling hands, whispering to him in Korean. Both families, once separated by culture, power, pride, and prejudice, came together around these two tiny humans who carried both worlds in their blood. They're perfect, Kong Min's mother said, looking up at her son. Absolutely perfect. They are, Dorothy's father agreed. Proof that love builds better bridges than tradition ever could. The first few months were chaos. Twins meant double everything, diapers, feedings, sleepless nights. The art center temporarily reduced hours so Dorothy and Kong Min could adjust to parenthood. He was a surprisingly natural father. The same patience he developed with kids at the center translated perfectly to his own children. He could soothe Eunji when she cried, coax James to sleep, handle simultaneous meltdowns without losing his cool. You're good at this, Dorothy said one night at 3 a.m., watching him feed both babies at once. Years of negotiating with difficult personalities prepared me surprisingly well for twins. He smiled tiredly. Though these two are far less likely to stab me than some of the people I used to deal with. Give them time. They're only 3 months old. Both families visited regularly. Kong Min's parents had essentially relocated part-time to LA, unable to stay away from their grandchildren. The tension that once existed between the families had dissolved into genuine friendship as they navigated grandparenthood together. James and Eunji's first birthday party was held at the art center. The entire space was decorated with artwork the kids had created. Banners and paintings and paper chains in every color imaginable. Both families attended along with friends, neighbors, and what felt like every child Dorothy and Kong Min had ever taught. The twins were passed around like tiny celebrities, soaking up attention, smiling at everyone with their 4 baby teeth. Kong Min's mother sat next to Dorothy's father, both of them watching the chaos with matching expressions of contentment. I never thought I'd see this, Mrs. Kong admitted. My son this happy, building this kind of life. Neither did I, Mr. Walker replied. After he disappeared that summer, I thought my daughter's heart might never fully heal. But look at them now. They watched Dorothy and Kong Min trying to help the twins demolish their individual smash cakes. Both babies more interested in smearing frosting everywhere than eating it. We almost destroyed this, Mrs. Kong said quietly. Our prejudice and pride almost cost them everything. But it didn't. They found their way back to each other. That's what matters. Still, I'll carry that regret forever. The things I said, the damage I caused. Mr. Walker looked at her with understanding. Then carry it forward. Use it to be better. Love them harder. Teach those babies that different backgrounds aren't obstacles. They're gifts. That's how you make it right. She nodded, wiping away tears. Later, after cake and presents and entirely too much chaos, the party finally wound down. Extended family helped clean up while Dorothy and Kong Min got the twins ready for bed. Both babies were thoroughly exhausted, sugar-crashed, and covered in frosting. Kong Min changed Eunji while Dorothy handled James, moving around each other with the practiced efficiency of parents who'd survived a year of twins. Once both babies were asleep, James in his crib, Eunji in hers, both making tiny snuffling sounds, Dorothy and Kong Min stood in the doorway watching them. A year ago they didn't exist, Dorothy whispered. Now I can't imagine life without them. Same. Kong Min wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real. That this is my life. Regret giving up the empire yet? Not even a little bit. He turned her around to face him. You know what I was thinking about today? What? That 15-year-old kid who made a promise under a tree in Charlotte. He had no idea how it would turn out. No idea if he'd ever see you again. But he meant it anyway. Promises made at 15 are usually forgotten by 20. Not this one. Never this one. He cupped her face gently. Dorothy, forever wasn't just a promise. It's real. It's this. It's us and those two tiny humans in there, and this life we built from nothing. It's real. She kissed him then, soft and slow and full of everything they'd survived to get here. 3 years later, the art center expanded to a second location. 6 years later, Kong Min finished a master's degree in child psychology and began working with at-risk youth. 8 years later, the twins started school and shocked exactly no one by being simultaneously artistic and stubborn. Kong Min's relationship with his parents continued healing. Slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. They visited LA regularly, and eventually Dorothy and Kong Min took the twins to Seoul to understand that part of their heritage. The Biko clan continued operating without him. His younger cousin took over as heir. Life moved on. But sometimes, late at night when everyone else was asleep, Kong Min would stand in his modest apartment and marvel at how he got here. From a boy trapped in an empire to a man who chose love over legacy. From 3 summers in Charlotte to a lifetime in Los Angeles. From a barbed wire tattoo that meant chains to seeing it now as a reminder of what he escaped. He never regretted his choice. Not once. Not even in the hardest moments when money was tight, or the past came calling, or the weight of starting over felt crushing. Because every morning he woke up to Dorothy beside him. Every evening he came home to children who loved him for who he was, not what he represented. Every day he got to choose this life over the one that was planned for him. And that was worth more than any empire could ever be. The boy who waited 15 years for her had become the man who would wait forever. And she had waited right back.